Zoe Hartsfield is the evangelism and community marketing lead at Apollo, a sales platform that is looking to become the go-to resource for all things prospecting and lead sourcing. In this conversation, we don't waste any time jumping into the practical and actionable stuff. We cover everything from the importance of personalization in your marketing messaging and outreach, and why making your customer the hero of your story is still a key component in marketing today. Zoe also shares her approach to building personal and executive brands in order to build huge audiences and, of course, establish credibility. It's an approach that opens up a world of opportunities for anyone looking to bring together their community of customers and building trust with them. There's a whole host of nuggets dropped throughout this entire episode, the majority of which ties back to buyer psychology, a key first principle for any marketing approach, no matter what channel or playbook you're reading from. Enjoy! Well, I mean, what a great place to start, right? Because you've got your beginnings in the B2B world in sales development. Why don't we jump right into that? You talked about personalization as an example, because obviously it's the big challenge right now when it comes to email outreach. What does good personalization look like to you? What's working for you at the moment?
I think I actually recently posted about this, sort of like a framework. I think we are our own favorite subject. Like, as much as we don't want to admit it, people kind of like gassing us up in some way is usually a pretty good way to get someone's attention. So like, can you find a piece of information on somebody's company that you can basically pay them a genuine compliment while also tying into your solution? So a silly example, or maybe not a silly example, but a realistic example was like if you were a recruiting firm or like a recruiting software or something like that, and you saw like a sales leader post about how they had like a record-breaking quarter, you might reach out to them and say, hey y'all, congrats on the massive quarter, like huge testament to your leadership. Seems like you might be growing and expanding the team in the next couple of months. I saw a bunch of job recs open up. If you could do XYZ faster, better, whatever, insert value, insert what's in it for me, would it be worth a chat? You know, something really like light, something where you're highlighting them, you're tying it to the problem that they're facing or about to face, the timing of it all, and then you're presenting your solution that still makes them the hero. I just think like when we're storytelling, whether it's in email, whether it's on discovery calls, whether it's, you know, trying to close a deal, the customer is the hero and your tool is the sword they use to slay the dragon. So it's just like really trying to frame your language around making it about them.
Yeah. How do you make sure that you're kind of dropping that flattery, for lack of a better word, without coming across too contrived? Because, you know, especially when you're dealing with senior decision makers, sometimes, or usually they're bombarded with messages, right? How do you make sure that's genuine and not just another, hey, I love what you're doing here?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, I think there's like human psychology to it, right? Like, what makes you feel better? Like, oh, you look great today. Or, oh, I really love those shoes. Where did you get them? I think it's about making compliments very specific instead of generic. So like people will DM me and be like, Zoe, congrats on the massive funding round. Huge props to you. And I'm like, I signed with Apollo after the fund. Like my first project was the funding announcement. That paperwork was done. I had nothing to do with it. Even if I was here, I wouldn't have had anything to do with it. So it's like some people will try and compliment you on something that really doesn't feel aligned with me. Like it doesn't actually have anything to do with me. And so they'll compliment the company. And it's like, how do you actually turn that into a real compliment for the person that's like, hey, nice job with Apollo, like, or whatever, nice job. You guys raised all this funding, but also I noticed the social media takeover and have a feeling you had a big part to do with that. I couldn't go anywhere on LinkedIn today without seeing Apollo, or anywhere on LinkedIn that day without seeing Apollo. Nice work. Would it be whatever? And then you like tie it into your value prop somehow. But I think it's just like you want to be short, you want to be brief, but you want to be really intentional and specific, because I think, yeah, like Apollo's killing it. It's like, yeah, we are. Cool. Like what does that have to do with me and my job and my
all 50, 100 of us?
Yeah, but if you can show me that you like pay attention to what my initiatives are, the impact that I'm driving and that I probably want to be driving, that's like way more interesting to me from a relevance and timing perspective than it would be if you're like, nice job on the funding. So cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about the fact that it was already done by the time you got there, it just speaks to a lack of decent research as well. And I think just that extra effort goes such a long way.
Well, and like to their credit, nobody taught me when I was an SDR anything about funding or listening to 10K reports or like any of that stuff. Like nobody, or like earnings calls, nobody ever was like, this is what they mean and this is like how you leverage them. They'd just be like, these are great resources for personalization. Again, it's like, here's the high level tip, but they don't walk you through how to really leverage it. Some people intuitively figure it out, but some people it's like when I got into software, I didn't know anything about anything. Like I would hear a new term and I would have to go Google it. Somebody actually, it was really funny. Somebody in a marketing meeting recently typed out like in the chat OOH. I was like, what the heck is OOH? And it's out of home. It's like, I do know what that term means, but it's like, I didn't see it in that context. And I've been a marketer for 3 years now and I didn't know what that acronym meant. So it's like, how often are we giving people advice assuming they know what to do with it and not getting granular enough, especially for early days employees that need just like a little more coaching, a little more guidance. I think it goes back to that, like, don't give a man a fish, teach a man to fish. I don't really like fishing, but like whatever example that you want to give there, it's like, can you actually walk somebody through the process and explain to them why it works so they can apply that framework to another type of research as opposed to just like copy and pasting. It's like templates versus frameworks. I think templates are more like one-off usage and that's what becomes spam, and frameworks are like kind of that teach a man to fish mentality.
100%, 100%. First of all, I love how we've got off on a tangent before we've even got started.
I know,
Like
sorry.
some absolute value bombs already. Do not apologize. This is where all the gold happens, right? There was one word you mentioned a couple of minutes ago in the context of, outreach and things like that, which was storytelling, which is fascinating because obviously you started as an SDR and now, I mean, you've got quite a decent track record in content and community. And it's very rare for someone who starts off in sales to kind of like kill it as much as you seem to have. Could you tell me a little bit about that journey from, SDR to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, like, it was really a crime of opportunity. Basically, I was presented with a few different promotion paths. I could have gone and been an AE, like, pretty early on into my SDR career. That was an opportunity presented to me. And I was like, I'm not interested in being an AE. For context, at the company I was at, the AE role I would have taken was for like VSB, SMB, very, very transactional. I would have been swiping credit cards and handing people off to sales. I now understand sales to be very different. Like now that I've, worked in as a mid-market enterprise BDR and worked with like an enterprise seller and seen what they do. It's like at that time, that sort of specific type of seller did not sound interesting to me. And that was just my personal preference. I just didn't want to do demos all day and hand people over. That said, I was also presented with the opportunity to potentially move into like a leadership position. And they were like, you're the number one person on the team on the list for this, but like, we probably won't need it for another like 6 to 8 months. And I was just like, I don't really want to like chill for another 6 to 8 months. When I feel like I've kind of like maxed out, not that you could always continue to learn. You can always continue to grow, but it's like, I was overachieving quota. I was working like 6 hours a day and hitting, 140% of quota. Like I was just bored. And so for me, I was like, I need another challenge. And I got really intentional about figuring out what I didn't want to do. Things like I hated cold calling. I still hate cold calling. I'll do it, but it's like not fun for me. I didn't love the like sameness of my day every single day. Although I will say that the SDR role taught me a lot about time blocking, which I still use in my marketing role. But that said, it's like, I figured out what I didn't want to do. I figured out the things that I was good at and that I loved. And I found myself having a knack for copywriting. And so it kind of made sense after networking with different people in different departments, talking to CS, talking to sales, talking to product, talking to marketing, that I was like, I think marketing is the path. And then I built relationships over on the marketing team. And by the time a role opened up, the VP Slacked me and was like, hey, I'm opening up this rec tomorrow. I expect your resume on my desk first thing in the morning. So I was really like handed an opportunity in a lot of ways, but also like I worked for it for many months prior by building those relationships and showing them that I was intentionally trying to move into that role. And that was kind of the catalyst for everything. I took a pay cut. I basically moved laterally from like a seniority standpoint, if not took like a slight demotion, I think, in some ways. But I like to call that my slingshot moment. I think that opportunity of like taking a step back launched me forward in my career, because that was around the time I started dabbling on LinkedIn. I had been doing it a little bit as an SDR and seen some success from social selling, but I really had the time to like become a content creator once I moved into marketing, and found that as like a really interesting source of pipeline. Community fell in my lap, demand gen fell in my lap, partnerships fell in my lap. And now, because of all of that experience, I've been able to basically like help design a role that I now sit in, where I get to leverage like all of my favorite strengths and a lot less of what I hate. And I get to deliver value to the business with meaningful programs. And it's just like, it's so exciting. And to even be full circle and like be selling a little bit again. So one of the things that was really important to me in taking this role, because we sell to sellers, was that I was like, if I'm going to be an evangelist for this product, I got to be freaking selling. And so I get to sell. I get to sell a little bit, and I don't sell a product. I sell actually a service. We throw some pretty epic events here at Apollo, and so I help sell our brand partnership sponsorships for our events. And I love it. I love partnering with brands, creating that mutual value, bringing them in. It's like perfect for those sort of like seed A, B size companies that maybe don't have the budget to throw $100,000 event, but we do. So you come in at whatever amount that we have like tiers and stuff for, and it's like helps us augment the cost so we can throw an even better event, and also gives you access to this $100,000 event, the leads, the vibe, the buzz, like all of it, our audience, everything like that. And so like I get to find these companies that I'm like, you are a complementary tool product. We sell to the same industry, but we're not competitive. Let's like partner on this and let's do something really magical together. So because of that, I get to sell again, but I also get to tell that story to sellers in the context of our product. Because like I just really believe that like our company, our content team is like phenomenal. And I technically roll up to the community team, but I really love partnering with the content team. They've got a mission of being like the space for sales expertise and like really actionable, tactical, no fluff content that helps sellers be the best and like put money in their pockets. And I just love that mission. And so for me, it's like it was really important that I continue to work in that space and actually practice what I preach, share my learnings, so that it's not just like, oh, back when I was an SDR 4 years ago, before the pandemic, before all of this stuff changed everything, this is how I did it. It's like sales is changing constantly. That email from Outreach about like the Google changes will change things in the coming weeks and months. It's like we have to adapt. And I think that the people I admire in this space the most, people like Jen Allen, Sam McKenna, you know, they're still practicing what they preach. They're still selling. They're not like so far removed from the game that they're giving people advice from 5-10 years ago. Which, don't get me wrong, it's super impressive to have been a top performer 5-10 years ago. But I don't know that's going to help brand new SDR starting today hit their number, to be honest.
100%. Yeah. So many people kind of make a shift from, whatever practice it might be into teaching it. That's essentially oftentimes what we do as content marketers, right? Or community leaders. We're kind of teaching the thing to kind of sell the thing almost. Do you see like a visible edge that remaining in that sales seat has given you, while also kind of, I guess, documenting it as you go along in a way?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I think it does a couple things. One, I think it really helps build trust and authority. It's one thing to have a marketer tell you how to sell. It's another thing to have a marketer get their hands dirty and like start selling themselves and talk about what they're learning in real time. I also try my best to tell like real, like obviously always real stories, but like stories of how I did it, less of like, you should do this. Because to be honest, I don't know if I sell to your ICP. I don't know if I sell to your same personas. I don't necessarily work in your industry. So if you were to take everything I said as law, it may not actually work for you. And I don't want to guarantee people's results. That's why I like frameworks over templates. And I really like to share of like, here's how I did it. If you want to try it, take it or leave it, as opposed to like, you should, because I just don't really, I think that creates this like convergent thinking that there's one path to success and there just isn't. It's, I think that divergent thinking in sales is like really a superpower. and allowing people to look at somebody's success and be like, how could I apply parts of this to my process and get better, is a lot more helpful. So I try and create that like open loop where people feel like they could insert themselves into my process and be like, okay, these are the pieces that I like. These are the pieces that I think would work for me, and ditch the rest. Cause like, if it's not going to help you, then don't try it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it sounds like you're already doing so much at Apollo, right? But on top of that, I had a little stalk on LinkedIn, and it seems that you're advising quite a few SaaS brands as well. So I've got kind of like a two-parter for you. First of all, what is the value that you're bringing to these SaaS companies? And also, how are you managing all that with all that you're doing at Apollo?
Yeah. So advising, I look at advising a couple different ways. There's sort of like an advisor, there's a strategic advisor. Like I am not, an executive level marketer who's going to go into a seed stage company and be like, here's how you build out your go to market motion. Like there are people in this space who strategically advise, people like, Amy Volas, Scott Leese, people I respect who have built careers, and they're going to give a really different type of advice that is more strategic than I could possibly give. I'm more of an advisor in terms of like my areas of expertise. So people usually come to me when it's like, how do we help our CEO build an executive presence? How do we teach our team to become evangelists and create content? I might advise on like community driven sales or even community building. So like it's kind of like the 4 to 5 things I'm really, really good at. Those are the things that I would give advice on. Like I am not equipped to tell you how to set up your marketing operations. I'm not equipped to tell you how to build your messaging from the ground up. I'm not a PMM. And like while I've dabbled in a lot of that stuff, I just don't consider it value I'm confident in bringing, but I know I can teach a CEO how to build their brand on LinkedIn, and I know how that has revenue impact. I know that I can teach sales reps how to social sell, and I know that that has revenue impact. I know that I can look at a company and give them a community strategy that will help them either build pipeline or create product feedback loops with their customers. And so I think there's just like a few things that I feel like I wouldn't even call myself an expert in, but like pretty good at and have done enough times with good results that I feel okay handing over my frameworks, talking people through it, spitballing with them. And so in that sense, it's like I advise, but I wouldn't consider myself like a true strategic advisor yet. I hope to be that someday after, a nice long career of collecting wins and evidence that like I'm building something that's meaningful. And I'm really excited for what we're doing at Apollo. I have dreams of building, a world-class executive presence program that other companies could take and learn from and use and like build themselves. But that said, that's how like I kind of bring that value. That's sort of what that looks like. It's probably, less than 3 hours of my time a month, give or take. It depends on the company. And that's total. Like I'm probably spending an hour with each company a month tops. And I really try and keep it outside of my working hours. Not that Apollo really like keeps me like on a 9 to 5. It's not like that, but like I really try and separate them because I freaking love my W-2, and I feel like there's like a level of respect that I have for that I want to sort of separate church and state. But yeah, it's not as much time as you might think. I'm pretty thoughtful about saying no when more people come on. I didn't used to be, and there's still areas where I could improve in saying no. But like when more people come and they're like, "Can you do this?" and I'm just like, I just feel like I'm kind of maxed out in terms of my capacity right now. So that helps too. But yeah, like the how do I do it all? It's less time than you might think, and also I say no to stuff, and that's how.
Yeah, and it also sounds like it's the type of thing that you can talk about and teach in your sleep, right? The things that you've been doing every day.
Exactly. That's like I'm not a full-time hire. I'm not there to build everything with them. I'm more so like, here's how I've done it in the past. Here's frameworks, here's, documents, here's learnings I have, here's everything I have written down, and I'll just hand it over to you. I'll give you the information. I will assist with the implementation, but really I'm more so like coaching from the sidelines on how somebody internally could implement that strategy, and they're going and executing on it. I think if I was doing the executing myself, which like I think there are certain one-off situations where I help with those things, but if I was executing myself, it would take so much more time. It's more so like, can I just give you the plan and can you go run with it?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned I think it was the term, because everyone calls it something different, but I call it executive branding, right? Something that you're obviously doing, a program you're building out at Apollo, you're advising some of these, CEOs and executives at various SaaS companies. How do you go about doing that? What does your framework look like at a high level? And also, how do you kind of demonstrate the value in it? One thing you said a second ago was, that it drives revenue. And for the discerning CEO, right, how would you go about making that argument?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways I approach it, and I usually try and do a little research on the CEO in advance. So it's like, what are their goals for the year? What do they care about? Are they somebody who likes to be out in front of people and they just don't have time? Are they somebody who does not like being in front of people, but they know that they maybe need to do something? It's like you have to really understand what their goals and like personal preferences are before you sell to them. It's like doing research on an account before you sell to them. What's the problem? What's the gap? How do we stand in the gap? And so for me, a lot of it starts with, industry stats. Like I really try and back things up with numbers. So I'll throw out, Inc. magazine's 77% of people in a competitive buying situation will purchase a product from your competitor if they feel like their executives are more active on social media than you. This is a paraphrase. I'm like butchering that stat, but it was something I read back.
It's there. It exists. That's the important thing. We can cite it.
Back in February, yeah, 77%. Like there's like a higher likelihood of you winning in a competitive deal if your executives are active on social media. Something like 86% of buyers are willing to re-engage with a company after a bad experience if they feel like executives are active and transparent on social media. So there's like this buyer brand trust that happens when you have people like CEOs, CROs, whoever, being a face of the brand. I also think some brands are good at having personality, but at the end of the day, it's people. Like you're buying into people, you're buying into the vision, you're buying into the mission. And in today's market, people are buying equally for the team they're working with just as much as the product they're using. And so I think that you have a competitive advantage when your team is active on social media. That said, that's like kind of where I start. And then I talk about pipeline I've driven for other CEOs in the past, kind of give like almost a case study. I talk about, results that I've gotten from their brand voice, and not just pipeline, but like, do you want to be on podcasts more? Do you want to like flex your thought leadership more? A lot of executives who are not CEOs will go on to consult later, right? And they could be wicked smart, incredibly good at what they do. And if nobody knows who the hell they are, it's going to be hard for them to get hired other than just like through their network. But if you start building thought leadership today, in 2 years, when your company IPOs and you ride off into the sunset to go do your consulting, and you have a 25,000 person audience who knows you're good at what you do, and you're like, hey, by the way, I'm starting consulting now. Think about how many DMs you're going to have in your inbox being like, please come advise our company. We love what you did at Apollo. So like, that's the way that I'm thinking about it, and the way that I sell it to them. It's like, you get to take this with you wherever you go. If you start building it now, it has compounding effects for present day company, future day company that you work at in terms of revenue, your brand, the company's brand, and your future endeavors will benefit from it. So it's like really kind of showing them the long game, because it is a long game. You're not going to start having somebody, work with you on your brand. You're not going to start creating content and then tomorrow your business explodes. It's going to be like 6 months of consistent work before you start seeing like the results that you're like, oh damn, it's pretty sick.
Yeah, man, I'm fucking pumped now. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like I'm a seller. I got to sell it to them.
It works. It absolutely works. And I'm kind of in that seat as well. We do it for a lot of our clients, but it's the old cobbler's shoes thing. And it's just like, oh, I know this. I should do it. I should do it myself. So what does the framework look like then from, let's just say I'm just getting started. I know that this is important, but I don't have time to create content. Where do I start as an executive?
So I think you have a couple of options. I think you bring somebody internal, who can coach you if you want to create your own content. You could hire somebody externally, like a ghostwriter. That's what a lot of executives will do. And basically, like, I do ghostwriting on this side. That's not really necessarily what I do internally. That's not my job internally. It's more like strategic programs. But externally, like as a little bit of a side business, I ghostwrite for a couple of executives. And we do that a couple different ways. So if they've been on any sort of podcast, if they have any existing written content, if anything exists, I have them send it over to me and I really try and start to learn their voice. Then we set up a kickoff call where we go through a brand identity sheet. It's actually pretty simple. We talk about, tone, audience, topics. And that's like the simplest way I could put it. That's the framework, that's the lens that we will write everything through. It's like, what topics do you want to be known for? If I were to pick 3 to 5 words or topics, what does Tom want to be known for when people come to him and they're like, I think Tom would have the answer about this specific thing. So you pick those things. You pick your tone. How do you want to sound? Because I sound different than the executives that I write for. In fact, I could probably pull 10 posts from 4 or 5 different executives I've written for and my posts, take all the names off of them, show them to you. You'd probably be able to pick out mine right away. And you probably wouldn't know that I had written the other, 8. But it's because the whole point of being a ghostwriter is you're supposed to be a mannequin. You want to be this faceless thing that people can just like envision themselves, their content in you. And so it's like, I really try and take myself out of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like method acting in a way, right?
Yeah, you really try and like take yourself out of it as much as possible. And like, I think sometimes there's like a little bit of a tell, like sometimes I can tell when somebody is using a ghostwriter, especially if I know the ghostwriter. And we don't usually like share who our clients are because like, of course you don't want to do that. But the beauty of ghostwriting is like, my whole job is to take your expertise that you have and just translate it into a friendly format for whatever we're doing. So if it's an op-ed, if it's LinkedIn, if it's a blog, whatever, I'm interviewing you on a regular cadence. I'm coming with the questions, recording the conversation, and then I'm taking all of that gold and flipping it into posts. So I'm not making up things about your expertise, your journey. You're the expert in your experience. I'm just pulling it out of you and then putting it in an algorithmic friendly format so that you can reap the benefits.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of finding the right inputs and getting that tone of voice right, which is something I think that, and I guess I'm speaking to our audience of writers here specifically, it's often something that they struggle with. How do you kind of get into that mindset when you're kind of, you use the term mannequin.
Yeah.
How do you get into that mindset, right?
Yeah, so I think it really helps if they have anything they've done before. So whether it's they've written articles or contributed to, blogs, or if they have been on podcasts are my favorite. Hearing you talk is what's going to help me write like you. And so that's another reason that I require that we have at least a monthly sync. I prefer bi-weekly for 30 minutes, but it's like I'll do monthly for an hour. And we do like a brain dump because I'm going to ask you a question, like a prompt, but I want to hear the way that you think through it and talk through it. I want to hear the special terms that are unique to you. Like I might say the word fun, like I had a super fun time at this party. And an executive might be like, this was a really excellent experience. Like I need to think about the way that they would say it. And so just hearing people talk is like the number one thing I do to get in their head. And then I'll listen to those audio clips as I write. And I won't write it word for word because usually the way that we talk is not the exact way that something like a LinkedIn post will read. However, it does help me think about like the terms that they use, the ways that the things that they might emphasize, the like point that they would want to hit home, a CTA that would make sense. And so, yeah, just like listening to people talk is the best way to embody their voice.
Yeah, amazing. Awesome. Lots of gold there, Zoe. Appreciate it. So you said that you're building this out at Apollo, and I just want to touch on that real quick, because obviously Apollo is making waves in the sales tech world, and it has done for a while. So another two-parter question for you. It's like, why do you think this is? And how do you think it's contributing to the amount of competitors are, I quote, copy your campaigns word for word?
Oh my gosh. Well, luckily they're not even just my campaigns. Like so much credit to Medioli Arias. She is our like social mastermind. I'm really lucky that I get to work with her and collaborate with her, as well as Dan Schmela, my boss. He's done a lot to help shape the Apollo voice and brand. I got to just step in and ride on their coattails off into the sunset as we like build this super cool program. But a couple different things. I think the macroeconomic environment. And even before this happened, I actually had an old CEO who said this to me and I couldn't unhear it. She said that, her name's Mel Fillet, by the way, she's CEO of Speckit. She was like, the great consolidation is coming. Like pretty soon there's going to be, 4 or 5 mega players who have your end-to-end solution and they're your one-stop shop for like 90% of your sales suite, or your go-to-market suite. And she was like, I think we're only, 5 to 7 years off from it. And she said that. And I was like, you're totally right. And it's happening. Like we're seeing it start to happen now, which is so interesting. And I think the reason Apollo has an advantage is we built instead of bought from the jump. That was a really interesting decision. Not everybody goes that way. I think buying is like maybe a faster route to that consolidation. But I think building is a more cohesive, smooth route to it because then everything is thoughtfully designed to work together. So like our data platform was where we started, and then we built engagement, then we built CIDI, and then we built meetings, and now we're building like AI powered ABM solutions. Like we're it's all meant to go together because it was built on the same thing, as opposed to maybe a competitor buying another tool, which there's nothing wrong with that. But then it's like, okay, how do we like Frankenstein this system together so they talk to each other so the data is good? Like that's a complicated lift and something they have to tackle. And sometimes they fit really well together and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it takes a lot of time and effort to get those things to work together. So I think we have a unique advantage just in the way that the product was thoughtfully built and is continuing to be built. I also think we have a huge advantage because our product people come from the B2C and like D2C world where, like our CPO was like one of the core builders of Words with Friends. Our VP of product was responsible for like the Travis Scott Fortnite concert, I think. So like these are people who deeply understand habit loops and gamification. So they are building, and they're like, they haven't even been here for that long. They are building a product that people are like falling in love with using, which I think is going to be a game changer for us, like over the next, 12 to 18 months. That said, I think people are copying specifically like Medioli's programs because it's just like, there's not a lot of other brands as active and engaged with their community on social. And that's like something public facing with LinkedIn and something internal. We actually have built a sales community. Taylor Bogar on our team built this incredible customer advisory board, right? So like we have people internally behind the scenes who we are talking with and supporting regularly. And that creates this organic engagement from them where they're excited to engage with us publicly. It's like if you can provide value behind the scenes, people are willing to champion you in front of others. And I think that's like one of the winning parts of our equation. So just hats off to Taylor and Medioli and the programs that they're building, because I think it's given us a huge advantage.
Yeah, 100%. You see it with HubSpot recently acquiring Clearbit. I think I can't remember the name of your peer who made this prediction. I don't know if it was Mel, but I think they're onto something.
Oh yeah, Mel Fillet. Mm-hmm. She's a CEO at Speckit.
Yeah, they're onto something.
Yeah, no, she's brilliant. Really, really thoughtful. She told me that 2 years ago, and we're seeing it play out. I'm like, damn, that's really insightful.
How did you go about building out this kind of behind the scenes community, as you put it? What does it look like? How do you galvanize salespeople in that way? And sales leaders, of course.
I think there's a couple different components. And again, I can't take credit for this because it was started before I got here. But I think it's a couple different things. It's one, have a product people love and stand for, because it's really hard if people hate your product to want to engage more with your company. So product that helps people helps a lot. Somebody like Taylor, who's just so organized and has so much vision for like the value of a customer advisory board. We also love to platform and uplift our customers in a meaningful way. Like we think that by uplifting them, it kind of uplifts us, and we don't really have to do a whole lot other than just like give them a platform to speak, highlight all the amazing things they're doing. Again, Apollo's not the hero. It's just the sword they use to slay the dragon. And I think that's a much more interesting story, and one we get to tell all the time with our customers because they love our product. They love that we have a platform and we platform them. Because, if we have 65,000 followers, like it's a pretty engaged company page. Like LinkedIn does not do company pages any favors because they want you to pay for ads, but we have like very, very good engagement and reach for a company page of our size. And so people get excited when we're like, hey, do you want to do like a takeover this week? They're like, oh my gosh, like you're saying I get to be put in front of your audience. So it's like we're providing people value, even if we think that, you know, maybe the value split is we're giving them 90% of the value and we're only getting 10% back. That's what partnership is. That's what like true community and like creating mutual value is. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It doesn't have to be us taking. Can we be givers? Because I think in the long run, this like abundance mindset of uplifting others, we will be uplifted in the end.
I can't think of a better note to end this particular thread on. Yeah.
Also, shout out to Dan Schmela. That's very much like his ethos. And I just regurgitated a bunch of it. I'm not trying to take credit for any of these ideas. Like our customer marketing team, our social media marketing team, the community team that Dan has built is just like phenomenal.
Amazing. I'm going to stalk Dan and steal what he's doing.
Do it.
But not as a direct competitor, which makes it a little different. Makes it ethical.
And well, I mean, it's great. Like, honestly, just a note on the competitor thing. I actually really do think it's awesome. Like, because it uplifts everyone in the space. I want other companies to lift up their customers. Why wouldn't you? Like, we don't have a claim on that strategy. I just think it's really interesting when you see it play out, like pretty much like framework for framework. But it tells us that we're doing something really interesting and we're leading something interesting. And I think it does a lot for the category. And it's good for everybody's business. Like, you know, rising tide lifts all boats. So I'm not mad about it. I called it out because I thought it was interesting, but not because I was upset. I was like, honestly, this is probably a pretty good thing.
Oh yeah, it wasn't meant to be a gotcha. It was just an interesting thread.
No, yeah. It's a good thing. Like, I think it's amazing. And also, like, shout out to our competitors. You're killing it. We wouldn't be competing with you if you weren't. And like, I'm just excited to see what the space looks like in the next like 18 months.
Yeah, I think no matter the industry, everybody in some way emulates or copies one another. I think it must be really exciting to be, you know, that brand that is setting that precedence that everybody's rallying around. So kudos to you and the team. Yeah, amazing. Zoe, this has been an absolute pleasure. Before I let you go, one last question that I like to ask all guests. What is something that you are working on right now that you are most jazzed about?
I think as I delve back into selling, I'm creating a bunch more video content, which I said I was going to start posting this week, and then I didn't because of some life stuff. But I'm going to be posting a lot more on like TikTok and Instagram, like short form video content about my learnings, really trying to keep it like value added or like at least, you know, relatable and silly in terms of the woes of selling, but also just like, I want to make sure that anyone who touches Apollo, whether it's the free version, the paid version, anyone who uses one of our competitors, they could come to my content and feel like they got something that makes them better at their job. Like, sure, go use our number one competitor and use my frameworks. If it gets you paid, that's awesome. Because like, I'm here to be a champion for the seller and I want people to win. And so I'm going to just be focusing a lot of my energy on my own content and evangelism, not only to uplift, you know, the Apollo product, but like the sales profession on a whole. And I'm excited about that.
Such a good mission. I think that's the ethos that content marketing was built on, and a lot of us have forgotten it. So it's a good reminder. And finally, where can people learn more about you?
I mean, I would say LinkedIn's probably the best channel to find me, to be totally honest. So Zoe Hartsfield, little 2 dots above the E, all lowercase. People are always like, why? And I'm like, because it stands out. But there's no.
It does certainly stand out.
Catches your eye, right? Like lowercase is the way. But I stopped writing all of my posts in lowercase, so hopefully that helps.
That's fair. Gotta respect the grammar.
The grammar.
The grammar gremlins. Yeah, exactly. Zoe, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Tom.